Hi there. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Fireside Adoptees Constellation and Legislation group. This is our chance to integrate as a wider community, more than just regular groups of adoptees or adoptees and first parents and adoptive parents, but a wider expanse here that draws in more interest, hopefully from our larger community outside of strictly adoptee spaces. So we have a really interesting event here, a really unique interaction for you tonight. And it will be between an adoptee, Sharon Hahn, and a DNA search angel, Andrea Coates. So I'd like to read to you a little bit of the bios of each of them. Sharon Hahn is a baby scoop era domestic infant adoptee born in Michigan in 1970. For as long as Sharon could remember, she was always very curious about her adoption and recalls not being okay with what little information she had been told. At 18, Sharon began searching intensively for a biological family. In 2004, she met Andrea Coates, and the two developed a fast friendship. And Andrea Coates is a licensed clinical social worker and a DNA search angel. In the course of their unfolding friendship, Andrea learned that Sharon was adopted and did not have her original birth certificate. And the injustice that Andrea felt and the outrage from it led her to commit to helping Sharon find her truth. Andrea has been a staunch adoptee ally ever since and has conducted dozens of searches over the past 10 years. So I'd like to welcome you both to Fireside. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great. We're excited. Welcome Andrea as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a unique event here. As I was trying to outline a little bit right before we started here, the role of an adoptee who has a story that's partly been filled out by the role of a search agent, which is something a lot of people have great interest in, finding out about their own biological families. I'm wondering what maybe an ally is in a community like our own. So we're looking forward to a conversation here. But of course, the centerpiece of it is Sharon and your story. And we'd like to just talk to you a little bit about being an adoptee, about finding out you were adopted, what it was like young, growing up. Would you like to share a little bit about that with us?
Absolutely. I'd be glad to. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm so excited to share my little piece of my story with you, hoping that it will help somebody. So I was born in 1970 in Waterville, Michigan, adopted 6 weeks after by a lovely couple in Bangor, Michigan, which is a small town near Waterville. I was in a foster care provider's home for the 6 weeks before they got me. But after that, I was with them from just 6 weeks old, which is pretty young. My family, my mom is Janet, my dad is Claire, and then I had still have a brother who's 5 years older than me, and he was also adopted. A little bit older adoption situation there, but 5 years older than me, and he was already in the home, obviously. So that's a little bit about my family. I was always curious. They told me stories from a young age that I was adopted. I don't remember a sit-down conversation of, hey, you're adopted, but I just kind of always knew. So I think they did a really good job of that. Really tried to help me. They said they told me stories when I was young that my mother couldn't care for me, so they took me. But there was always this, I don't know how to really say it without it sounding weird, but I always felt kind of like a fish out of water. I didn't look like anyone I knew. I didn't act like anyone I knew in my family. I was completely opposite my adopted mom, completely opposite in every single way. Just always felt different than everybody else in my family. So that was always difficult for me. I was very strong-willed, still am, but I was very much controlled the situation in my adopted home since I was probably a toddler. I was very headstrong, For example, one time I wanted ice cream for breakfast. They wouldn't tell me no. And so from that morning on, I had ice cream for breakfast every morning because that's what I wanted. And they could not tell me no. So just little things like that kind of throughout my upbringing made life difficult when I left home and realized, oh, I can't just tell everybody what I want and get it. And it doesn't go very well when you're not living at home. So in 1988, at 18 years old, I decided that I wanted more information than I had. My parents had given me the adoption paperwork, which had some non-identifying information in it, which was helpful. And I scoured over that, I don't know how many times growing up, reading it, looking at it, trying to find, well, maybe I got my love of reading from my mom because it said my bio mom loved reading. Maybe I got my love for sports from my dad because he liked sports, those kinds of things. So I tried to connect through that non-identifying information. In 1988, at 18 years old, I showed up at the hospital I was born at and asked the nurse at the desk to see the records for the babies born on my birthday. And that was back before computers and all the things kept records like that. So it was in paper form, and she went away for a little while and came back to the desk, sat that down in front of me, which was, a table, a countertop away from me, and read the information about the babies that were born on my birthday, and saw that there was a baby doe, or whatever they called them, called us, born that day. And she closed the book in front of me and said, I can't give you that information. Because she knew who I was at that point. She did, however.
Face with her, right?
What?
You were just face to face with her.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was like 2 feet from me,
That's
which was crazy. Yeah.
outrageous. Yeah.
Yeah. So she did tell me, however, that there were 2 baby girls born that day. One was delivered by a doctor who I didn't know his name. The other was delivered by Dr. Boothby, who was a family doctor, who was also the pediatrician that my adopted parents, took me to growing up. So, which is mind blowing to me. So I'm not sure if he was the one that gave, birthed me or whatever. Yeah. But I did, that kind of sent me on my next trail, which was contacting him. He had retired by that stage. But like he gave me all my shots. He's the doctor I went to when I was sick, all the things. So I knew him, and I looked him up in the phone book, and I called him several times and left several messages for him, and never received a phone call back. So a year later, I petitioned the courts of Michigan for any non-identifying information that they could give me through the court system, through the adoption. And I did receive some non-identifying information that I had not had to that point. So that was helpful as well. But still didn't give me what I wanted, which was a name of a mom or a dad or whatever. So in 2003, I contacted an intermediary because the adoption agency that my parents adopted me through had been closed. And so the state of Michigan took over all of those records. So I contacted the state of Michigan and intermediary, and she contacted my birth mother and got back to me and said that the birth mother did not want contact with me because someone in her life didn't know I existed. And so that she didn't say that exactly, but that was the gist of the conversation, was she didn't want that person to find out. I'm assuming that was her husband or someone like that, close enough to her that it would have mattered. but she did give me some medical information, which I did appreciate at that point. I was 19 and had some medical information. So that was 2003. And then in 2004, I met Andrea. And Andrea, do you want to help?
Sure.
Yeah.
Our sons played baseball together and we became fast friends, and just sitting on the, for hours and hours and hours on the bleachers and in our little chairs watching little boys play baseball. She was super curious about my adoption story and just asked question after question, which was just really heartwarming to me to have someone care enough about me to ask questions. And so Andrea, at one point, I don't remember the specific conversation, but asked, could I help you? Could I help you search? And I had no idea at that point what I was unleashing. By saying yes. Andrea is a bulldog of sorts, in the best way. But her friendship to me, her loyalty to me, made it super easy for me to trust her.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Andrea, before you started, you thought very much about the topic of adoption before you started talking to Sharon about this?
No, I mean, really, all I knew, I had known a few people who were adopted kind of when I was younger, but I had never really talked, definitely not in adulthood, had talked to an adoptee. And I'm just a curious person in general. And I usually, upon meeting someone, will say, hey, I ask a lot of questions. And so if anything I ever ask you offend you, let me know. I remember saying that to Sharon. And I said, do you mind if I just ask a bunch of questions about being adopted? And she said no. And so I did. I asked a ton.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was as simple as, well, did you get your birth certificate? And she's like, oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she said, sure. I I have my birth certificate, but it doesn't have my biological parents on it. And I remember when she told me that, I remember thinking, so wait a minute, you're an adult and you have a falsified government document. Like, I just remember in the bleachers, I was like sitting below you, and I remember thinking, how really is this a thing? Like, I had no idea. And I've since learned that still there are so many people who don't know that,
Mhm.
who don't know that adult adoptees don't have their original birth certificates in most states, and that it's not only not original, but it's falsified. And so that part really bothered me. I'm an Enneagram 1, and the truth is like the most important thing, and knowing that she didn't have it outraged me. Yeah.
Like, oh, what was it like from your side, Sharon, to see somebody interacting with you about this?
About the birth certificate. And
Somebody who is passionate about
yeah,
adoption, you was and about
yeah, I guess
with the birth certificate. Yeah.
because that had been my normal, and it was my it was the only birth certificate I knew I had a right to, if that makes sense. And so for me, it was like, oh, well, it's okay. Like, it's all right. That is my name and it is my parents' name. I just don't know my birth parents' name or a name I was given at birth, if any. And so it was just my reality. And so I never really, I just had accepted it, I guess. But yes, very heartwarming, and I was very appreciative of her defense of me, and her the way she stood up for me just really meant a lot to me. Yeah.
So what did you know about doing a search, Andrea? How would you go about doing this? Sharon trusted you a lot with a lot of.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I was thinking a lot about this in anticipation of that question. My mother was worked in the law library in our county office, and so she researched lots of things, court cases and things for attorneys. And then she had a medical condition, and we had like volumes and volumes of medical encyclopedias and physicians desk references and a whole volume of like Encyclopedia Britannica. And it was always just encouraged that I was curious and that there was always a way to find an answer to something. My mother was very young when she had me and was a hippie for all for all intent purposes, was a hippie. And so she just was very much like, there's always the answers. We're always searching. It's fine to ask questions. And so that's what I had. I just had a bunch of curiosity and I guess the confidence that I could do it somehow. And so a few years later, Sharon and I met at a coffee shop, and she brought a manila folder and she handed me her information, which really chokes me up thinking about it. And I remember going home and reading it. You know, there were notes from the foster mother about, you know, her feeding schedule and about how she was you know, a happy baby and she would coo at certain times of the day, and then her different non-identifying information documents were in there. And it's still, even like many searches later, when someone's, usually they're sending me via email or whatever that information, it's not lost on me that sometimes this is the only thing that adoptees have, and they're sharing it with me. And so it was, you know, a privilege and an honor to do that and to you know, go through that for the first time. And so then I went home and I immediately found the the mother of the other baby that was born that day. And then we started, thankfully Facebook was a thing by that time, so I was able to find her on Facebook and kind of start that process. It was very slow going because this was before DNA, or before DNA was accessible to the average person. And then even when we did get on DNA, it was still so expensive at the time. But yeah, that's how it started.
Yep.
It seemed like, here we go. We're going to learn to do this together. And I know it was probably very difficult a long time for Sharon. What is it like to wait for a long time? And for Andrea, what is it like to go, I wish I had something to give to you and I just don't have it yet?
Yeah. Well, I had waited my whole life. So for me, it wasn't like I was sitting home pining away. Well, when is she going to find something? It was kind of like when we would talk, sometimes like she had a full-time job. She had 3 kids. Like she had things to do, lots of things to do. And we would talk late at night a lot of times because we did have families at home and kids that had sports and all the things. And it'd be 11 o'clock at night. We were kind of both night owls at the time. And we'd be talking and she'd be like, listen to this, listen to what I've found. And she'd be on her computer half the night, looking, searching, archiving, like all the, like calling libraries, getting newspaper archives, all the things. And I was just like, hey, like, you don't have to do this. This is crazy. Like, you're spending so much time. But it had awoken a passion in her, and there was no stopping her. And so for me, it wasn't like I was sitting around waiting. I had done as much as I could do to search from my knowledge. And I thought, well, I trust her. She's my friend. And every step along the way, she would say, is it okay to do this? Is it okay to go this step further? I mean, she always made me aware of what she was doing and always made me feel comfortable that I could say no at any point and say, nope, done. Don't want to do this anymore or whatever. And she was just really, really careful and sensitive to me, always wanting me to know this was my story and I was in control at all times of what was happening. So that just made me feel really, really comfortable. And so yeah, I mean, it took a really, really long time to get a bite. How many years, Andrea? Was it?
Well,
I'm looking
yeah, it was
10,
8.
8.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 8 years. It was my longest and hardest search. Yeah.
By far. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So in the waiting, so I guess 2009 is when I got the documentation. 2013 is when we got on DNA. In the 2009 to 2013, we that other mother that we knew about gave us a name, and we actually went to her home, and we found the family. Sharon said, let's take a road trip. And we went to this woman's home, and her daughter was there, and Sharon just told her on the doorstep what was going on, and they invited us in. And Sharon, I'll let you tell that.
Well, so Andrea found immediately one of the two moms that had given birth on the day I was born, and um asked her if she remembered the name of the other woman or if she knew who the other woman was that gave birth. And she said it might be so and so. And so that is the woman's doorstep that we showed up on. Um, on this, well, I think I might remember how many years ago. Um, 40 some years ago that this woman was in the hospital with me giving birth to a baby girl that she didn't keep, so it was a huge risk, but we showed up and they were super, super kind, and it wasn't her. But we learned a lot that day. I think at that point Andrea was like, okay, we can't just go rogue here. Like this cannot be how we do this. And that's when the DNA, she started schooling herself in centimorgans and like all these things. And that's when my brain went boosh. And I was like, you take this part because that's beyond me. And so I just kind of let her roll, and she was a bulldog and just searched and searched and searched and figured out how to do family trees on Ancestry and all the things and what all these different levels of centimorgans meant for relationships and all the things. And so I was just honestly in awe of her, and how she didn't give up. Yeah.
So I'm interested in the fact that I think it's very relatable for adoptees to go. I don't know if I don't know how to have the presence of mind to do some of this. The person you trust to find these things out, what a big commitment that is. Not everyone will have the advantage of having known somebody for years to do this work for them. So that it seems like the trust element part of the adoptee towards the search angel must be immense for that to be productive. But I think it's natural though to feel like I'm a real competent person. I can do all these things in my real life. And when it comes to something like handling my own information or learning about it, I need somebody else to do it. I feel like I can really relate to what that feels like. Maybe there are other adoptees who will watch this will go, yeah, that's how it was for me. I couldn't do it either. I needed somebody to do this, not because I wasn't smart or capable. There's some things that you can't make that step about. So Andrea, you picked it up and you went with it.
She did.
Yeah, so that is when my introduction to the community happened. So I found Richard Hill. He had just written his book, and he had just kind of came out with, a kind of like a guide to DNA. It was primarily on ftDNA. It was a pretty scientific kind of route that he took. But I reached out to him. I IM'd him, in Messenger. I started reading blogs at this point and memoirs. I also started reading The Girls Who Went Away, which just really gave me a very different perspective about birth mothers and kind of the climate at the time of the baby scoop era. And so I just started educating myself. And so that then we decided kind of methodically which DNA platforms to do. We chose at the time, because it was early on, and this was quite a bit of money at the time, but we chose to do 23andMe first because, it had said that it gave some medical information. So we did that one first. Ironically, 23andMe ended up being the one that was used to confirm some relationships later that were very important. But Ancestry became, our main, that's where the breakthroughs happen, just because I always call it the biggest pond to fish in. But we did 23andMe, ftDNA, Ancestry, and then eventually MyHeritage, and had really good luck with MyHeritage. I just did MyHeritage because it was free to upload, but so that was, super fun too. The results were, but all to say that I educated myself at this point because I was calling librarians. I was making friends with librarians in the state of Michigan. And I was doing a lot of the, that paper research, but when we decided to go to DNA, I knew I had to become fluent in this. And so I started, we were getting Sharon's matches, which were very, very low. They were, under 100 centimorgans, which if anyone on this call has done any research, it's just almost impossible to do much with under 100 centimorgans. And so I decided that I would start doing searches for other people. And that's when I found the Search Squad on Facebook, and they kind of had an internship program where I could do searches under supervision, and then with other seasoned search angels who could help. And then, I was vetted kind of through them. I gained my wings, that's what they called it. And I felt, I just had some oversight, and I felt like it was the best thing to do to kind of build trust with other adoptees, because I knew I couldn't just say, hey, I'm this non-adopted person who'd love to help you, so give me your personal information and I can do that. And I wasn't willing to go in that way. So I went in through the Search Squad, and I learned so much there. I just learned all the basics. I did lots of searches. And so by the time breakthroughs happened with Sharon's DNA, it was pretty easy by then. And so I had trees built, very, very large trees built already for Sharon, where we could, by the time we found, a biological parent, I could just pull up that tree and go, okay, like he fits right there, because I had this huge tree. So there was so much I learned during the waiting, which was wonderful. And then at the same time, it was frustrating for me because I wanted to find her people. But all of the people I was able to help along the way, it was just, such an honor to do that.
Can y'all believe her? I mean, seriously. It's amazing.
It's a wonderful service. And it is a service. And by that, I don't mean a service that costs an adoptee, but just it's an amazing thing to do for somebody, and the skill it takes to do it. The knack for solving difficult things, because and the tenacity, all those years, right? Not finding anything, or finding almost nothing.
Yeah.
sharpening skills along the way anyhow to come back. You must have been so excited when finally that breakthrough happened. So what was the breakthrough and how did it go from there?
Go. I can't. Sorry.
Well, June 2017, I was at the lake and I was checking my phone. I checked Ancestry. I felt like every hour of every day. And I checked it and up popped a first cousin once removed. And I found cell service like somewhere and I ran and I called Sharon and I said, oh my gosh, like we have a first cousin once removed. I think by tonight I'll be able to figure this out. And because so I did as much as I
many
could.
at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew a first cousin once removed. As long as that first cousin once removed wasn't adopted, I knew that we could do it because some people that happens with them. And so I went home and I think it was probably like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I figured it out. And then during my learning process, I came across a very, very seasoned, well-known search angel who is also a first mother. And I had touch base with her along the way just to make sure I was doing the right things with Sharon Search. And when I found who I thought was the birth mother, I emailed her and I did not tell her who I thought it was. I just said, here's the match. Let me know what you find. And she came back with, this is who I think it is. She also has a sister. And we all know with non-identifying information, it can be off. It's only as good as the person who reported it, right? And so it can be off a couple of years, with ages and things. So she had a sister, so we had to make sure we ruled her out. I was pretty sure I had ruled her out based on occupation and other things at the time, but the search angel said just make sure. So I did, and it was who we thought it was. And so that was the first breakthrough. Mhm.
So let me ask Sharon this. So go years and years with, she's working on it, and then suddenly you get the news you're about to find out. Are you like, what, right now? I don't know if I'm ready to find out right now. Are you part of that?
No, I was like, bring it on, let's go.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Good,
yeah,
good,
I
good.
was so excited.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like, I'm right at the threshold of this discovery and how I feel going into it.
No, 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 it was great. It was
Better than
great.
I would have
We
done.
started planning our trip.
Yeah.
We had
All right.
to go to one doorstep. We weren't afraid to go to another. So that was the next step. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Do you want me to tell about that?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to go chronologically or not, but you
Yes,
do whatever
let's
you
go
want.
chronologically.
Okay. And then a year and a half later, so once we found the birth mother, what I had learned during the process of doing other searches was that a name and a picture are super, super important right away. And so we found pictures. We found lots of pictures
On Facebook.
We found pictures that looked just like Sharon. I remember we were on the phone, a group call, while we were looking through the pictures, and you said, oh my gosh, that's me. And it was one of her pictures, and you pulled up your picture that looked just like it. It was just wild.
Crazy.
To experience that like in real time with you. So a lot of it was just kind of just researching her and keep going with that. And in the meantime, we just kept hoping that, biological father would, a match in that family would show up. And for those of you who have searched and know, once you find one side of the family, searching becomes so easy because you're just looking for that other side. Until then, you don't know who you found. Like when that first cousin once removed showed up, I didn't know if it was maternal or paternal. So, but what, maternal was done. So we were just waiting for paternal. And so then sure enough, so a year and a half later, another first cousin once removed showed up, and we knew it was paternal at that point. And this is the tree I had built. So I had Sharon's paternal tree completely built out, and I had no idea where he was going to fit. I had no idea. But as soon as the first cousin once removed popped up and I found his family, his parents, I knew exactly where to go. And so it was just like, it was just so crazy. It was like we were missing the one puzzle piece. We were able to put him right there. He had brothers, so it was kind of the same thing. I had to make sure that it was him and not the other ones. And then I did the exact same thing. I sent everything to the other search angel and said, can you please double check me? And she came back with, you found him. Congratulations. And so, yeah. So then that's the fun part. That's where the fun begins.
I don't remember the order.
Yeah.
I
So then after we found your birth father,
That's
then
when we went to.
that's when we decided to do the trip. Yeah. Mhm.
So, what's interesting is I grew up in a very small town, like I said, in Michigan. The hospital was also a very small local town there, and she was from Coloma and had been there her whole life in that area. I mean, so she lived 15 minutes from me my whole life. And her family, I mean, she had a family and all the things. And that was just mind-boggling to me, that she lived so close, yet we just didn't know each other, So it was February of, do you remember the year?
Yeah, it was 2019.
19.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have my best friends still live in the area up there that I grew up with. And of course, they had known my whole life about my story and supported me wonderfully. And so my friend Krista offered her home for Andrea and I to come up and stay. We all got in a van. And we showed up at her doorstep, and there had been this huge snowstorm the night before. So there was probably, I don't know, 3 feet of snow in front of her front door. And so we couldn't go to the front door. So we sat in the driveway. We pull in her driveway. We did a pass first, of course, got to pass the house and then come back, pull in the driveway, and her front door isn't accessible. And we're like, well, what do we do? And the garage door was open. So she saw Andrea and I get out of the car. I don't know this for a fact, but I think she recognized me. I think she knew who I was at that point. And she met us on the stoop in her garage. And Andrea had done a ton of research on how to approach this awkward thing, hey, I'm your kid. So she had done a lot of research on how to properly approach it, and which I appreciated. So she said to go in and just tell her my name and tell her the day I was born, the year, the hospital I was born at. And I repeated it. She kind of looked at me the first time like this, like, and so I nervously repeated it again, the information. And she said, well, honey, do you think I'm your mother? And I hadn't said that. But she said, do you think I'm your mother? And I said, well, yes, ma'am. I know you are. DNA says you are. And I'll never forget, her little hands were shaking, just she was holding her little hands and her little hands were shaking. And she denied it. she said, well, no, you know. And then I said, well, do you know so-and-so? And I named my birth dad, whom we had just found, you know, on Ancestry. And she said, well, yes, of course I do. And very fondly talked of knowing him. They had worked together. He was an out of town sales rep that came in and sold parts to her business or whatever, or the business she worked for. So anyway, long story short, she admitted knowing him well, but denied saying she was my mother. So that was tough. But honestly, just seeing her, like having pictures and being able to know information through Facebook and piece things together, stuff like that, see family members' pictures, was very, very much closure for me with her. I wish I could have sat down and had a conversation with her and heard her story about everything. But she obviously has had her own stuff that she hadn't worked through yet with it and wasn't ready. So we were very kind, and Andrea just kind of stood behind me and supported me, and got back in the car, and we freaked out with my friends, and so it was just a really it was a good day, even though she said she wasn't my mom. I knew she is, you know what I mean? I knew she was. And so it was like, well, she can deny it all she wants, but we know the truth. And so, and just another quick story, we got back to my friend Krista's house, and Andrea checks her DNA sites, like she said, 20 times a day, and up popped a match, brand new match. And it just so happened to be my birth mom's granddaughter. Hours, like less than an hour after we left her home, and she said she wasn't my mom. Her granddaughter showed up as a match for me. So I say that was my God moment of God going, I know she said she wasn't, but this is the confirmation to you that you did it. Andrea did it. But we did it. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was cool.
What a story.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, Bev is what we call her. Her name's Beverly, and so we call her Old Bev.
And we bless her bones a lot, don't we?
Bless her.
We bless her bones, yeah.
That's a
ah,
sweet moment.
Mhm.
after you find all this out and you have that connection, then you just, were there more discoveries to make after that?
So
Yes.
in the course of her search, I helped 3 other people in her family who were adoptees. So 3 cousins, one distant who actually is here, and 2 first cousins showed up within that search time. So there were those, just I was able to help them. Sharon was able to help them through having her DNA out there. So I was able to help them. They were all 3 paternal lines that we helped find. But yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And come to find out, I had a half brother. That's why the granddaughter showed up. She was searching for her dad's dad, parents. But Obev had a son and did not marry that father either. And he was 7 when I was born. And so he also has never known his father, even though she kept him. But she never told him who his dad was. And she knows.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And the reason we know that is Bev's brother matched me on DNA, and I was actually able to meet him and his wife. And he told me that she had kept her son's father from him as well, and that was just her. And so it kind of helped to get that information, to know, she had given me up and wouldn't give out the information, but she also kept a son who she was still keeping his birth father from him, which I don't know, tells you a little bit about her, I think.
We offered to help him. I've wanted so badly to help him find his dad. I think it would be fairly easy, and he has declined that offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His even though I match his mother on DNA and I match several
His daughter.
relatives and his daughter on DNA, he still denies that I could be his sister or his half sister, because he doesn't remember her being pregnant. He was 7, so, he's rationalized that to, well, I don't remember it, so it can't be true. So that's his take on it. So we haven't had any contact since that day. Yeah.
Never do know what you'll find. Of course, the
Never
emotional preparations.
Yeah.
You're finding, for searching and finding, that's immense. And I know it's individual for everybody to be I'll just say as prepared as you can be, but nobody knows until you're going through it what it's going to be like for each one of us to do it.
Yeah. And I didn't
Yeah.
have this idyllic reunion. I honestly, from the time I was little, I just wanted to know where I got my nose or my eyes or my hair or my dimples or whatever. I just wanted a face and some information, and possibly a conversation, just to know the details of my birth and who I was, where I'd come from. But so much closure occurred for me with the pictures and the information that we were able to gather. So that was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, and then speaking of your nose, and going back to the timeline, we in 2021 we composed a letter to Sharon's birth father, and we sent that, and we didn't hear anything back. And rookie mistake, we did not have it tracked. We didn't send it certified. So several months later, we did it again, and we sent it.
Several
And
years
then
later, wasn't it?
yeah, April, June 2019, we sent the first one, and then April 2021, we sent the second one because we hadn't heard. And so, and that we had sent the first one after we had met Bev, and we hadn't heard back. And then we sent another one, and then we heard something. So I'll let you say that part.
So between 2019, and so the first letter was sent from Kentucky because we lived in Kentucky. We had a job change in 2020, and my husband and I moved to Chicago suburbs, for a brief time. And the second letter was sent from that area. And that's where he was from, resided while I was growing up. That's where he was Chicago. So when I sent the second letter, about it was refused. He refused the letter and had it sent back to me. But because I had had it certified, the post office let me know that he had declined it and sent it back. And so at that point I was like, well, what are we gonna do now? But at least we knew he got it. And I think it was a day after I found out that he had declined the letter, I got a Facebook message. So let me backtrack. So back in 2019, when Andrea found him and his family, we were able to find all of them on Facebook. And so from 2019 to 2021, I was able to see two half sisters, and their families on Facebook, which was mind boggling. And him, he had a slight Facebook presence, but not much. So anyway, so in 2021, when we resent the letter from Chicago, on Facebook Messenger, my half sister, Sharon Marie, which is my name, Sharon Marie.
Oh my gosh.
My adopted parents named me Sharon Marie. Her birth name with my birth father was Sharon Marie. Can't make it up. 10 years older than me, reached out and said, he got your first letter in 2019, told Dawn, is my other sister, Dawn Marie, and I about you, and said, this can't be true. This can't be right, because I don't remember that lady, referring to my birth mother. Says he has no recollection of her. So I can't be his daughter. So, but they took one look at my Facebook profile and said, she's your kid. But he wouldn't do anything about it. And so they also had been watching me on Facebook for a couple of years, which was heartwarming to me. So she reached out and we had coffee the next afternoon. Come to find out, she lived in Chicago as well, and we lived about an hour apart. So we met halfway at this little restaurant, pub place, and I got there first, and she walked in and like her jaw about hit the table, because I don't look like her. I don't look like Sharon, but I look almost identical except for coloring. My hair's a little darker, and my eyes are darker, but facial features, nose, mouth, eyes, all the things, is her sister. And she about lost it. She was like, okay, so you look just like my sister, and kind of freaked her out a little bit. But I think we stayed there 2 or 3 hours and just talked and got to know each other. And I offered to buy her a DNA kit, and she accepted my offer and took the test, and it came back whatever, 99 point, whatever it, it came back that she was my half sister. So, she and her sister did talk my birth dad into meeting me, and, he finally took a DNA test as well, and it was confirmed. And we did meet. He's a character. Yeah, he's a character. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. But it was, and I also got to meet my half sister who's in Texas. And so, got to meet Sharon's family who lived there in the Chicago area. Beautiful people, wonderful people, both of my half sisters. And we still have contact to this day. So very thankful.
That's
Yeah.
sort of stuff that you hear again and again, and yet this is powerful each time you hear it. Doesn't lessen the impact when we hear these amazing synchronicities that happen.
Mhm.
But I think they always slam into us. Wow. Even when we've experienced them ourselves, and I know many adoptees who have. Wow. What an amazing conversation. What a dynamic the two of you have. I was so excited to have you both do this. I think it's, first of all, it takes a lot of courage, Sharon, to share all these things and to be here with somebody I know who's been an amazing emotional support for you. So thank you for sharing your story, for Andrea for doing everything that you've done. And you're a testament to the importance of allyship and supporting people in this community. And that's one thing I wanted kind of to end with here, is just a reminder to people that it could be scary to do this, right? To entrust your search to somebody. And of course, nobody can guarantee how it's going to turn out, right? Or that everything will be perfect in terms of the results. But I think we've heard some really powerful words here about how supportive somebody who's not even directly touched by adoption can be, as this is the role of the ally. People that can add strength to our voices and message and project it out further than it's going. So thank you, Andrea, for that. Just to both of you, I know we could talk forever. There's just so many great things here. Really captivated this discussion here, kept everyone going. And again, please accept our profoundest thanks. Thanks for that. And we look forward to getting this up on the Fireside Adoptees YouTube channel, where I have every confidence that a lot of people will be very interested to hear this. It's really been a noteworthy conversation. So thank you both for that. I know we went a long time, but there's so much to talk about, and it's just so important to see this type of interaction. So again, very profound thanks to you both.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
You're
So
welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Thanks.
So for everybody, we're going to conclude the recorded section of the Zoom call here. The actual call will go on after this, but you'll hear the announcement of the end of the recording. Just stay on. If you'd like to spend a few minutes here, we'll have a Q&A session. But thanks to everybody for coming to the Fireside Adoptees Constellation and Legislation Group. And we look forward to seeing you at another event. Thanks.